Stephanie, did you make that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, seconded by Paul. Do we have any comments for this meeting?
Yes.
Through item 1, do you have anything on item 1, anybody? Item 2? Item 3?
Madam Chair,
Yes. Kirk?
a couple of questions and comments about our motion, since I was the seconder. Item number 5, I'm wondering about the inclusion of that last phrase and possibly add some vertical siding. It's both a general question and a specific one. I'm wondering, if the board should be using questions like possibly, and if that was really the consensus of the board at that time that everyone thought, quote unquote, that possibly that he should add some, or the applicant should add some vertical siding. I have other questions about other items, but maybe we can talk about that one.
Paul?
I just threw that out there saying that if the design looked good and it had vertical siding, then it would be appropriate, but they weren't limited to only horizontal siding.
As in, could be board and back.
Could be board and back. So
I don't remember. I remember at the time thinking to myself that I think they were going to be challenged by trying to incorporate vertical siding, but I didn't bring it up because we were just offering it as a suggestion. We didn't say that if they added it, it would be approved necessarily. We just were giving them suggestions. So, yeah, Stephanie.
Suggestion of board and back would be appropriate in the neighborhood as well as horizontal siding.
That's true. So maybe there's another way to word that that whole item instead of. I think it's potentially misleading the way it's stated.
how about instead of vertical siding, put down vertical board and back, because that's the historical look that we're looking for, but by no means is it a directive, because the word possible, it's up to the designer to make it look good.
And it doesn't guarantee that it's going to that it's going to be approvable. If they came in with it, we weren't saying that we would, approve it 100%. We just said it's a possibility that it could look good.
Could we, since vertical siding also might be an option, could it maybe the rephrasing should be to retain some horizontal siding or other siding options?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. And it's siding, not sizing, Gloria. Yeah, that's a typo.
We could also just take out horizontal or vertical altogether and just say retain some siding.
Some wood siding.
Yeah.
Well, but it was all horizontal. The existing house was all horizontal. So.
Still gives them an option to go either way with it.
Either way, what did you rephrase it as, Gloria?
I was waiting for you guys to decide, so I have,
What was the last thing we said?
or other.
What was the last thing we said? before?
Applicant is encouraged to retain some horizontal siding or other siding options.
I think that's fine. If it's okay for you guys, if it clarifies it for you.
Vague enough.
Okay. What was the other thing you had?
Number 7, this is also partly a question. Is it the policy, or the practice, rather, of the board to request the applicant, investigate building department requirements for specific items? It's my understanding that we're an aesthetic board and we're dealing with the aesthetics, and that raising questions about code issues that are building department issues are not necessarily our purview. So I don't know how other board members feel
You're
about
right
that.
about that, and I think the only reason that got put in the minutes is because we were encouraging the applicant to determine what sizes of the windows he needed before he came back to help to assist us and to assist him in not having to come back again if he had forgotten to take that into consideration. So that was we could reword it to state that the applicant is encouraged to verify the required sizes of the windows before they return.
Madam Chair.
If-
And Kirk, in the past, if there's been a particular obvious building code issue that would affect the aesthetics, in this case, the proportion of the window, we will kind of mention it to the applicant to, hey, you should look into this. But yeah, otherwise we do steer clear of those things unless there's an obvious aesthetic impact that could happen.
Yeah, I just, one of the questions that came to my mind is, how would we verify that they have met with the building department, or that they've adequately addressed an egress question, and they may have gotten direction as to the code issue, but they may have made a mistake on the plan on the actual size. There's no way to really, for us to verify that they've complied with one of our requirements at the next meeting. But I think that's just a general comment.
In mind, the egress for the building applicant to review the size of the front windows.
I think that it's pretty clear what our intent was in that, and I don't necessarily think this one needs to be changed, but in the future, we should all take caution in how we word the motion so that it's clear that we're making aesthetic recommendations. But in this case, we were trying to do a favor to the applicant.
Yeah, I understand.
So that they wouldn't necessarily have to come back
Right.
with an option that the building department ended up requiring them to come back with.
Right.
So that one's going to be okay,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
just for that reason. Any other ones on that one, Kirk?
No.
I have one on that.
Go ahead.
On item number 9, just to add hardscaping to that, so it would read, return with a landscape plan and clarification of all proposed hardscape and fencing,
Okay.
because they didn't have the sidewalks called out.
All right, item number 4.
Madam Chair, on item 4, since I was the maker of the motion, just like a few clarifications on item number 1. Instead of exactly as it reads, I would like to add the word overall. The overall mass, bulk, and scale of the proposed additions appears acceptable. And number 2, a question again. In my experience in having projects reviewed by ABR and my previous experience on ABR, I don't recall ever asking an applicant to locate fenestration on adjacent property unless there was some dispute with the neighbor about the impacts, potential impacts or aesthetic impacts to their property. So I'm just wondering about the appropriateness of that.
It's something we've been requesting for a number of years because the issues of privacy has come up, and we don't wait for a dispute to bring it up as a question. We've been asking for that. In the event of a window being located on a setback line where it appears that an adjacent structure might interfere for privacy, we've been asking for that. We commonly do.
Well, in that case, I wonder about the specificity of that comment, because does that mean that he needs to come back and show where all the windows are on all the adjacent properties?
No,
so we weren't-
only in that one. He knew what we were talking about, and
Did he?
I hope so. He's been here he's been here before. We can make that clear again. We can.
So maybe
make a
we could
distinction.
just revise that to say provide footprints and approximate fenestration locations on adjacent properties where visual impacts are likely.
Yeah.
Something like that.
That makes that makes sense. Gloria, did you get that? Yeah. That's
Okay. And then number 3, study the windows to retain their existing proportions, variation, comma, or no comma, sorry, and mullion breakups. Just adding the word mullion.
Okay.
And then on number 6, This is another kind of question mark. I know there was a discussion, a couple of board members talked about reducing the size of some of the columns at the second floor balcony. Although in my recollection, there were some cases where the columns lined up with columns below, and I don't think we were asking him to reduce the size of those, but it was the intermediate ones that were a question. And I'm just wondering about the wisdom of that comment of reducing the size, because they were plaster, and suddenly if he came back with 6x6 plaster columns and those intermediate locations, that's not. I don't think that's what we were. That would certainly not be an approvable design change.
That would reduce the height. This wasn't that more the issue of height.
It might have been size or height or both. Could we say study the sizes of all proposed balcony railings or balcony columns?
Yeah. I think
That's, as somebody said before, sufficiently vague enough for them to understand what we're talking about?
Study eliminating.
No, just study and scratch eliminating or reducing. Just study the sizes of all proposed.
proportions.
Study the proportions of all the proposed
Well, it was my
balcony
personal view.
elements.
It was my personal view that there was too many columns at the second floor. That just taking out those intermediate ones would have helped the design a lot. So that's why I don't want to lose the word eliminating there. So I think he should study eliminating some of them. In my own view, that's the way it should read.
We need to leave it so that the designer has the final decision
Right.
on whether he wants to make the mass smaller in each of the columns or eliminate half of them. It's really his choice. We're just pointing out that what he has wasn't acceptable.
Right.
So really, we're just telling him to study eliminating or reducing the size, period. Come back and show us what you got.
But what I'm saying is reducing the size of those second floor columns. I don't think that would be a good design direction to give to the applicant.
Well, then why don't, like I said, why don't we just say study the design of all of the balcony components. Study an appropriate.
I guess that's that. I mean, yeah.
Because there were several directions that he could have taken. He
Yeah.
could have even eliminated all of them and gone back to a wood post situation or something. And
Yeah, so I'll propose rewording that, study the design. So, I would say restudy
Restudy the design.
of all second floor columns at the balcony railing.
That sounds good to me. Is that okay with you, Keith? You were the seconder? All right. Good. All right. Any more discussion items? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Consent calendar of January 30th. Can I have a motion to ratify the consent calendar of January 30th? Motion made by Keith. Second by Chris.
All right, for consent calendar on January 30th, we had item A, 504 West Pueblo Street was continued indefinitely. Item B, 7 South Milpas Street, got a final approval with conditions. Item C, 3849 State Street, that was an in-progress review, so there was not an action. It was continued indefinitely. That'll return to consent calendar. Consent last week was reviewed by Paul Zink and Chris Gilliland.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Consent calendar for February 6th, which is today. Can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
By Paul. Second by Gary.
All right, consent calendar for today, February 6th, we had item A, 2222 Bath Street, got a final approval with conditions. Item B, 604 Santa Barbara Street, a review after final was approved as submitted. Item C, 122 Santa Barbara Street, was continued to the Planning Commission. And consent today was reviewed by Paul Zink and Chris Gilliland.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Any announcements, Tony?
Yes, just a reminder about your Statement of Economic Interest training. Some of you have not completed that yet, and time's getting short for one of you, but I'll contact you individually about getting this done. Just a reminder. There's a free training offered, three training sessions on February 13th, but you can ask me later about that.
I thought the deadline was this week. The deadline is after the 13th, obviously. The training session is on the 13th.
Right. Gary Mosel has a deadline of the 13th. The rest of you who have not completed it, Kirk, Stephanie, and Dawn, still have some time, but you still need to get that done.
Everybody got that. There's a seminar now to tell you how to fill out the form.
Madam Chair,
Kind of
I
nice.
have a couple announcements.
Yeah, go ahead, Jaime.
Just a couple things that I should let you be aware of. We had a meeting with the city folks that are in charge of trash enclosures, and they were indicating that some of the trash enclosures were being approved, or the question was not being asked by staff about recycling areas. There's specific standards on dimensions, and there's actually guidelines. I don't know if you've seen those for trash enclosures. So as you look at parking lots and look at those areas, it's another element that it makes sense to ask the question, where's your trash enclosure? If hopefully we'll be able to ask that as far as our checklist for final approvals, that if you're reviewing them, that's one of the things that they've asked us to make sure your boards are aware of these requirements. The second item has to do with landscaping plans. I don't know if it was mentioned here before, but the city is actually plan checking water conservation standards now. They're in the land development permitting process. So they're overseeing essentially all the ABRHLC and SFDB approvals and pointing out where they believe they're not consistent with their standards, since they're essentially were public works standards that were adopted. So again, this is another reminder that if you see an area where turf is being proposed, that's one example where unfortunately we had turf being approved on a building and it's installed and everybody's saying, well, how could that happen? Because it's not allowed in commercial uses. It just makes us, it makes it easier process if we identify that they need an exception, if you see it. So, Chris, you're being looked at. All the approvals and landscapes are being scrutinized. I just wanted to point that out. For not only for planting species, but also for all the irrigation. That's really how this oversight started. There were some new standards for irrigation controls, and they weren't being installed. So there's some oversight on inspections, too, that are happening just to make sure those systems get installed per plan. And then one last thing, with respect to energy requirements, this is something that's come up recently also. Apparently, building safety is now enforcing these high-efficiency lighting standards that were adopted, I think, in 2010. And it's not only that we're looking for the appropriate aesthetic fixture on the outside, but they also have to be specific sockets, apparently, that allow for either fluorescent or high-intensity HID lamps. So the oil incandescent are no longer being allowed for these outdoor common areas and outdoor lighting fixtures. They give you an option to have photosensors or motion detectors also, but those typically aren't the aesthetic type of lamps that we want, unless they're making them now. I don't know how many are out there, but we're going to be seeing more and more. So when you spec out light fixtures, that might be applying more to the consent reviewer. That's something, again, that we should pick the right fixture, else that's getting rejected in building plan check. Again, they have to return back to get the approvals. So I just wanted to point those things out. Yes.
Madam Chair, Jaime, is there a way for us to get a little more data on just those three items that you mentioned, either by email or handouts?
Sure.
I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, I just pulled something off the internet to get this information, so I'll forward that information to you.
Thanks.
When Jaime, when we start getting specific like that, and then the board is having to, I guess it's a question, are you asking us to be the plan check review on this item, or is it something that should be included in land development's plan check checklist? Because
Well, what I'm asking is if you're looking for, we just talked about code versus aesthetic, you may pick a lamp that looks great, but if it doesn't get identified as meeting this new standard, it's going to be rejected. So it's essentially, it's more of a beware to the architects also to make sure you spec out a fixture that's going to fly with building code compliance. So I going to instruct our staff to make sure that if they see a fixture, that they identify it as that type of fixture, that we see cut sheets, that we see that it's in compliance with that standard. So we'll help you as much as we can, but unfortunately sometimes architects do come in on a consent calendar on a final review of details and start showing you the fixture, and it's just an additional question, does this comply with energy regulations?
One other question.
Yes.
Back to trash enclosures. So that I know there are new requirements now as of January 2010 for, I think it's 2010, for handicap accessibility to trash enclosures. So if there's an existing trash enclosure and the applicant says, yes, there is one, here it is, you get to the building department and it doesn't meet ADA standards, which is one of the primary means of compliance with ADA now, is that you provide pedestrian access and turnaround capabilities within the trash enclosure. So is that something we should be looking for also? And how do we assess that, whether the building department is going to require it or not?
Right. I guess it's going back to the first question that you talked about, which is what's your responsibility? I would think that the architects on the board are now familiar with the code requirements that are triggered. And as you review more and more plans, all of you become familiar with that standard of have you addressed accessibility. And that starts with the path of travel, the ramps and the steps and the handrails. We have a subcommittee on handrails because all the handrails have been installed over the years incorrectly. So we've just discovered that. So it's a learning curve. And so I would think that if you see that they haven't addressed it, that it'd be advisable to just, again, do something like you did before. Make sure it's in compliance, or else you're going to have to return back if they have to deal with a redesign.
One other point, because last week you said if there's anything we wanted some training on, to mention it. I think this would be a good item, actually,
Okay.
is ADA accessibility requirements and how that can impact a site plan.
Okay.
Both, parking, trash, entrances, all of that. I think that would just a quick review of those
Yeah,
would
I
be
can
great.
get someone from building safety to come in and do a little quick overview. We'll do that. Good idea.
And basically, though, we're reviewing what's in front of us. What we can do is make suggestions to the applicant or get information from the applicant as to how far they've gotten with the building department with their design, but there's only so much that we can do. And if they didn't go far enough in their research and have to come back, then they have to come back. But it's not going to be ultimately our responsibility to design their trash enclosure. So, and there's some gray areas of that too. So.
Dawn?
Yeah.
It also goes back to that whole issue of the chimney caps.
Yeah, there's
It's
lots of
kind of-
design issues that we can review what's in front of us, but
It doesn't get approved by building and safety.
if it doesn't get past building and safety because of the code
Right.
issue and it has to return, then we review it. Then we review what it has to return.
That's part of our subcommittee. We have chimney caps,
Right.
handrails, and roofing, smash tile roofing. Now, those are the three areas we've identified that we need to clarify further.
So is that it for you, Jaime? So that kind of segues into subcommittees. Does anybody have any subcommittee news? And just, Jaime, we're waiting for that next subcommittee, that next design review subcommittee.
Taking photo surveys of different buildings, and
Okay.
we'll be coming back.
Okay, so we're going on to item number 1, 3851 State Street. This is a final review. Project received project design approval on January 23rd. With 10 comments. Would you like to one by one go through those comments as you address your resolution to those? Would that be a good way?
I think that would be a good way.
Do you have a list, or do you want me to read off
We
the list as I go?
we have a list. Clarence, you want to get the list out of the...
I think it's the same list. We're reading off the same list.
microphone? It's that oval button. There you go.
I think we're going to be reading off the same list.
And your names for the record.
Nina Ray.
And Clarence Ma.
All right.
They got the plan, so...
So the first item is reduce the patio wall height to 8 feet or less. What you'll see in the plans is that we lowered the entire structure down by 14 inches, so the wall now is exactly 8 feet.
They should be
Just show us where that is.
Yeah, there's a...
Let's see if I'm going. No, keep going. Keep on going.
New patio, museum, wall. Hold on, one more.
I think this is this.
Oh, it's...
Here we go.
Yeah, right here.
So this is Plan A5.1, and the height of the wall is 8 feet.
Great.
All right.
The second item, I believe, is exterior light fixtures are to have downcast light and no upcast lighting. And we now have a downcast light. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Maybe this was talked about.
And
We're okay, all right.
that's a white acrylic curved face. And that's that piece right there.
Yep. It's that one right there.
Everything else is... What's the material of the rest of the fixture?
Let's see if it says anything there.
No, it doesn't. Socket, crossbow.
That might be a question that comes up.
Acrylic ivory.
That's for the
lens.
the lens part, yeah. I was just looking for the material of the light fixture itself, but that might come up as a question.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll move on.
Okay. The next item, provide color samples of the stain previously approved for other trellises and wood elements in the building. Our understanding from our architect is that he spoke with landlord's architect, and the color of the wood trellises in that portion of the building has not yet been approved, so that we're now working off of a darker stain, which was recommended to go darker by the ABR, so this is the color that we're now proposing.
Okay.
And then on the lighting, it says down here, material acrylic/steel. Down here. Somewhere. I'm reading it upside down.
So the color doesn't really say what the color is, but okay. Go ahead.
Okay, the next item, well actually, what color samples of the stain previously approved and wood elements on this building, that's done, okay. Provide construction details for the trellis, showing the top members wider and shorter, and they have been now made wider and shorter. They were previously 2 by 10,
Now
and
they're
now
3 by 8 at 16 inches on center. And that's what was recommended the last time we were here.
That's the secondary joist, these.
That's right,
This way.
yeah, that was the concern.
And then the primary joist is how big? 4 by 12?
I think that's right,
4 by 12 is the main
the
runners.
main runners.
And then there's...
Oh, there's only 2. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Provide preliminary construction details for the fireplace.
Okay.
Consider the spark arrestor and chimney cabinet.
If we go to 3.1,
Which is this one.
there are fireplace details here.
Okay.
Any questions?
Do you have anything that we've missed on the
Yeah.
list?
I got a bunch more stuff. Provide a color material board that includes the brick cap and pavers.
The pavers that the architect is proposing is this,
And then
and
the
the brick
brick.
caps is that.
All right. Provide the concrete step out at parking spaces.
Remove.
Oh, I'm sorry, remove the concrete step out at parking spaces 36 and 38
Right,
to
you can
provide
see
more
it in
space for planting. Thank
Pretty
you.
much all the plans.
Yeah.
I'm
Go to
looking.
that landscape plan.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, it's in early on. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Provide additional construction details for the wrought iron railing.
Yep, that is also in the plans. It's off of one slide, actually. Hold on. No. There will be an upper corner here somewhere. Here we
Right
go.
here. Shows the sizes and the
2.1.
at the upper left corner.
All right. Document existing and proposed landscaping in the existing planter at the east
Back
side.
to the second sheet, which is the landscaping plan. There's a comment now on the box here with the pigment date palm and seasonal color.
Okay. And then the last thing is show compliance with Stormwater Management Program requirements.
Right, so it's in the civil engineering plans, so let's
Which
go.
is this one right here.
This is grading, and then stormwater, I think it's the following page.
Yeah, this is the stormwater.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to add to the presentation?
I think this is pretty much it in response to what you guys had brought up on the last meeting, so.
Okay. Do we have any public comment for this item? No? Questions from the board? Gary, do you have any questions? Chris?
No.
Kirk?
Yes. Since we just had a question raised, do you know where the trash enclosure is for the project?
Trash enclosure, it was on the previous submitted plans, it's down kind of this direction here from the space.
Okay.
Panda Express.
Correct.
So it's shared,
Yes.
Yes.
yeah,
For the complex.
and it's been approved?
Approved in the first phase of construction, yes.
Okay, okay. And then I don't know, in going through the drawings, I didn't see a lighting plan. Is there a lighting plan yet?
No, there is not one in this package other than what we've submitted on the type of fixture that's being provided.
Your fixture locations are shown on your elevations,
Just say
right?
yes, they
And
are.
that's a correct indication of the
Correct.
locations.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thanks.
Paul?
No questions?
Quick question, the finish of the handrails, is that
Sampler,
Rails.
the guardrails rather around the patio.
You mean the railings?
Yeah.
If we go back to the railing details,
It was on the
there we
A1.1.
go.
They normally pull it out for,
CMU on the finish there.
the railing material
It's just wrought
itself.
iron?
The
It's just wrought
Normally
iron.
wrought iron, and it should call it out on this side here. 21. Yeah, they're wrought iron fans.
Yeah.
Color.
Questions?
The pickets are 4.5 inches apart, and I don't know what that is.
That's because it's not a barrier. It's not a guardrail.
Okay.
It's just a barrier.
Okay.
They're allowed that.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I have a few
Yeah,
questions.
go ahead, Chris.
The stormwater management, can you walk us through what the provisions are that you propose for that?
It's that side.
And really speak to
Do you want to turn back around?
And I got these ones here.
Okay, you have that, okay.
Yeah. So we can be looking at it.
Yeah. So it's C.
C1.2. That's
What was
right
your question exactly, Chris?
wondering what they are doing to accommodate for the stormwater requirement.
They have a couple of notes saying that the requirements, this plan shows the requirements for the erosion control, and that all erosion control has to meet city and regional water quality control board stormwater
Right, which
best
is-
management practices.
That's erosion control. What about stormwater management?
There is a drain rate that's shown on Plan View D. So whatever runoff that's going to be from the site would be collected in this drain, and it has rocks and it from all the cells and stuff going in the storm drain.
And this was a Tier 3 stormwater SWMP?
SWMP.
And that's all that was required was?
I think that's all that's required because our site is not over an acre. We're not doing an improvement that's beyond an acre, so those are the minimal requirements.
Okay. And then one other question was,
I might be able to help you out.
Okay.
I spoke to the engineer last week, and he was going to confirm that the pavers and the soil beneath would percolate and accommodate the adequate amount of stormwater. So I think that'll be the solution. Plus, I think using that if that truly is permeable, it proves to be really permeable, then we don't have to count, or we can offset the replaced impermeable surfaces with that amount that's going from impermeable to permeable, and we'll get below the threshold for Tier 3, and I think that'll be the solution.
and then the other thing was, is there a detail showing I guess it was a brick cap on top of these walls? Is that in the set?
They referenced a photo of a cast-stake brick. And it
says, I don't think it is.
If we get an elevation. Hold on a second. There'll be an elevation of the wall. I think there is an elevation of the wall.
Maybe you could do it on this one. Would you mind?
Yeah, because we
Can you look
can't see
upside down?
upside down, that's why.
Okay. What page do you think it's on?
It was on, most likely on the elevation, so one.
Some of the view, including the fireplace. So you see the brick cap on the top of the wall.
Right here. Do you have I think what he was asking for
Something's blown up.
is there,
A detail for
there a
this?
detail for this?
I don't think we do.
So,
does it overhang the stucco and how much? And
it looks like it overhangs slightly based on the drawings that are in place.
Yeah, normally it's about
All
6
right.
inches.
that's all you got. Any more questions? Comments? Who's ready? Paul?
Simple comment. On the light fixture itself, it's all about the finish to be Cafe Noir. So I would just say when you turn in plans for final, if you can provide a color photograph of a light fixture, just so we know it's not, galvanized sheet metal,
Okay.
that would address the concern that the light fixture is appropriate for the community.
Okay.
Okay, is that it, Paul? Kirk?
Just to tag on to Paul's comment first, I got shot down about this last time, so I don't know if it's appropriate to bring up, but we were talking about the light fixture as being okay, given that it's it's an outdoor enclosed quote unquote patio, but in fact, with the railings on two sides, it is basically exposed to the street. As well as the parking lot. And in fact, it faces State Street, even though it's set way back. So I would still like to see something that speaks more to the style of the building as opposed to being just a kind of logo for the restaurant, if that's what it is. And then also detail 9 on the SD1, the structural details, where it shows the cap for the trellis. It looks like there's exposed Simpson brackets there.
Good call. Good
And
catch.
those should either be recessed, hidden within the wood of the trellis, or the decorative type. Those are my comments.
Meaning painted. Meaning painted.
I don't
No.
think he means painted.
No, decorative meaning it has a ornamental.
Version.
Or a dowel,
Or down.
Yeah.
Could, yeah.
threaded rod.
Okay.
Any more comments, Kirk?
Well, just to be nitpicky, also on that same
detail. I think it's a little, in my experience, it's a bit unusual to have that extra, 4 or 6 inch bump right underneath the columns, rather than having the column, the wood members look like they're actually bearing on the capitol. And I don't know how other board members feel. This has been on the drawing since the beginning, this little extra bump right underneath the wood, and I think it's that should just be eliminated myself. So.
Any more comments? Kirk? Any more comments? No. Okay. Chris?
Oh, I have very little to add other than, I guess, a quick question. Is there brick anywhere else on this property other than the pavers?
The wall cap and the fireplace.
Right, okay. So I guess my comment is, to me that seems, a standard brick on top of an 8 or 9 foot wall seems very diminutive, and it seems like either there should be no cap to it or something a little more substantial. But that's it.
Carrie?
I didn't get the color of the railing. I don't know if you had a color check for what the wrought iron was.
I think it was just planned to be black color.
Black wrought iron.
Yeah.
Okay. Probably note that on the plan. I'm not really wild about the fixture. I kind of feel like the fixture should be a little more decorative, a little more towards the Spanish in style, and they're not indicated on the columns, but on the floor plan you indicate that they're on the columns on each side of the columns as well. They're not indicated on the columns on the elevations. And also I'm going to agree with Chris about the brick cap. I would prefer to see a larger cap, something that looks a little bit more like I would prefer to see a sandstone cap, seeing how we have a lot of sandstone at the bonds, and it's kind of tying into the same shopping mall. But I'm not set. I'd see what the rest of the board members say, but I would agree that the brick seems a little small for that tall of a wall.
Keith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would agree with the previous comments on the light fixture and Kirk's observations of the detailing. I would weigh in on the wall cap. Maybe I agree the brick's probably not appropriate. Maybe a terracotta or something that ties in with the colors of your pavers. And then the only additional comment would be I think the trellis stain should be darker, and the shopping center has those kind of gateway trellis structures that are a darker stain, so I think probably tying in with that might be more appropriate with the style. That's it.
All right. Stephanie?
I wanted to ask about the fireplace detail, the fireplace detailing and that surround. Is that a plaster band?
It looks like it.
Round.
Let's go to the detail.
There's a detail.
Which sheet is that on again?
It is on A3.1.
Exterior cement plaster trim.
I like the fact that you guys have detailed it a little bit more, but the proportions on the signs need to be a little wider, maybe.
We increased it from what we had before.
Right.
We even had it narrower than what we had on the old.
And I think it looks a lot better, but I think it could still be a little wider.
I had a question about that trim. Is it a square detail or a round detail? You don't have it detailed in plan, large, or...
It's a square detail.
square.
It's a square, yeah. It is a square detail.
All right, I agree with the comments about the light fixture. I don't think you've fully resolved that yet to the board's satisfaction. And also, I think you should be really clear about where those fixtures are in plan view somewhere. You've shown them on the walls. But where did you see it, Gary, that it said located on the columns?
On plan view, there's an indication that there's on the center columns.
Where does it say that? Where does it, yeah, I'm there.
It doesn't turn on. At least the last time it did. Yeah, if you look
the
on
elevations,
A21, on plan view, it shows them on the columns. It's on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
A21.
Oh, yeah. there it is.
6.
Oh, okay. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
10, 11,
11, 12, 13, 14.
14.
Wow.
So those are all indicated. Did the board notice all those?
I noticed them last time.
And they're 26 watts. It's not an issue of the amount of light, right? It's the issue of the lighting fixture design at this point? Okay. And then I agree with the stain color. I think it should be a little darker. And my opinion on the railing of the top of the wall is that the simpler the better, and I would just suggest removing that brick cap.
Moving it?
I kind of got that sense from the board too, but we can talk about that some more. Who else wants to talk about that?
The comment that I was going to make about the brick is that if it was vertical pieces instead of horizontal pieces, it looks like it has a little more stature, and that would help it. I look at this as just being like the inside of their store, and I think if in San Francisco or someplace where I've been at one of their stores, the color of the brick will match the color of their pavers, and it's more like an outdoor room of their TI space.
But that's not what they're proposing. They're proposing that red brick cap, and then they're proposing the red brick on the fireplace detail, and then they're proposing those pavers on the floor. I just think there's a lot of materials going on myself, and I think that elimination of the brick is one step closer to a clean design that kind of stays with one.
What they could do is to mimic the column capital detail. Like that.
Say that again?
Just that, the scale of this, scale and proportion of that plaster detail on top of the column on the wall.
Where?
Which sheet are you looking at?
Elevations.
5.1.
5.1.
If you're talking about simplifying, not a change of materials.
Oh, she's suggest. I even missed that plaster top because on the detail I didn't even see that. Where's that detail?
It's SD1.
Molding. What's the molding
Molding.
made out of? Plaster or brick?
It'll be plastic.
Plaster.
It's a plaster molding. So what Stephanie's suggesting is that you
Mimic
could do
that.
a plaster
Okay.
cap.
Okay.
Cap. That would be acceptable.
Madam Chair, I don't think we want to limit them to just say, let's do plaster. I think a lot of us would prefer to see stone cap. I think tying in with, as I think Kirk said
I
earlier.
prefer to see no cap, but
I think
we all have our own opinions on that one.
There's 5 or 6 different opinions here. I think that myself, I think the brick is fine because it ties in with the roof color.
How many people think the brick is fine? Sorry I interrupted you, Kirk. It's not a deal breaker for me. So I'm
indifferent about it.
You're indifferent too? That's the majority.
I think the problem I'm having with the brick is that it's so small. And if they,
What?
if it was more
I think,
substantial.
yeah, 3-inch brick. It's 2 and something. I think, to me, that's substantial enough. But
Okay, you know what, we're sitting here designing this project, and we really
Because
shouldn't
we hid the bricks in the design from before, from the first draft, so.
But we didn't
it's-
have details. So we asked for details. This is a final approval. We're trying to, the reason we're having this conversation is we're really trying to give you approval, so we're trying to resolve all these things, but it's a little too much to do. How would the board feel about sending this back to consent with just a few items to resolve, a few details to
Yes.
resolve?
Yes.
Okay?
And just to add in, it is true that I believe the brick's been on there from the beginning, isn't that right?
That's what they just said.
And we haven't given any negative comments, just to provide a detail. And they came back with the detail, it's a standard brick. And so what's wrong with that now?
And then even on the light fixtures, it was voted that you guys are okay with this as long as it's downspout. You're not really looking for this finish. So we've kind of gone with the directions given, unfortunately.
Yeah, we have. We did say, it was just pointed out to me that we voted on whether the majority of the board could approve a non-traditional light fixture. So I would suggest we don't move the other direction on that item.
I would say that they still should bring a color photograph of what they're proposing so that we can see that it's not orange or some garish color we want to see. Because really, Cafe Noir, I don't know what that is.
It's French.
Madam Chair, can I make a motion?
Yeah, go ahead.
So
Thank
this would
you.
be final approval, 2-week continuance back to consent with the following comments.
This is not final approval. It's a continuance to consent.
Continuance to consent,
Okay.
correct. Revise the column capital detail to eliminate the additional concrete portion above the trim. Provide a lighting plan that includes a catalog cut sheet photograph of the lighting fixture depicting the proposed finish. Make the wood stain a darker color. And I think that's all I have.
That's what I mentioned, yeah.
We have some things to add. Does anybody want to second it before we go into discussion?
I'll second it and
Go ahead, Kirk.
comment. I'd also like to see them study reducing the number of exterior light fixtures.
That's a study item. If you, consider. Anything else, Kirk?
Well, I'm not sure if I missed the comment, but on that same detail 9 is to look to study either hiding the structural support or providing ornamental support.
I had just one note that it should be noted that the wrought iron proposed is black. And that's the only other thing I had. Any more discussion?
One more, we'll also need an irrigation plan.
Irrigation plan?
For this committee or for plan?
For this, for when you come back to consent to get your final.
Okay, so we do need it for this committee. Okay.
Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
You're one step closer. Sorry we couldn't quite make it happen. We're up to item 2, a little behind, 822 East Cannon Perdido.
Can we go? Let's go to the land.
Yeah. This is project design review. This is project design approval review. And the last comments we made were on June 27th, 2011. The motion was continued indefinitely to the full board with the following comments. The site plan and overall mass, bulk, and scale is supportable. Show the locations of existing significant trees and adjacent canopy trees and buildings that surround the site. Provide a preliminary landscape plan. The modification for parking doesn't have any negative aesthetic impacts. The project will respect the pedestrian master plan and refine the architecture to unify the style overall while maintaining individuality of the units. Your name for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Ryan Mills with DMA.
And I'm Courtney Miller with the Office of Katie O'Reilly Rogers.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, a quick recap is we came before you last June 27th for ABR Conceptual, and you just read the minutes from there. Since then, we visited Planning Commission on January 12th we got a unanimous approval, so we're an entitled project now. And today we'll be asking for project approval if you see fit. And so I'll cover the last minute comments. We'll respond as we move through. So I'll just sort of jump into it. Site location, I think you're all familiar with it, but we're near the corner of Milpas and East Canna Perdita. We're one property off. And that was just a desirable location for this project in general due to the walking nature, transportation, amenities, and so forth. We're a low and very low income development. Here's existing site conditions. Views directly across the street of the creamery, and it's Felinda Avenue moving adjacent from our property. Here's a view of our property. You can see to the east is the commercial, almost three-story face right on the property line, and then on the other side of our parcel is a existing two-story apartment building, which we show here as well. Towards the back of the parcel, we're starting to show just some of the existing condition. It currently has two cottages and carport and garage. Two garages on the site, which you can kind of catch. Here's some of the old structures. And then on to the new. So the proposed development, because of the nature of the site, the existing topography has a bit of a bowl to it. So for this proposal and for us to accommodate Tier 3 stormwater management, we're essentially raising the site, excavating, and filling. So we have overland drainage, and we will be a retention project. So we're maintaining and treating our own water on site. And we have permeable paving, which Courtney will walk us through later. But in general, we are 12 townhome units broken into 3 buildings. This front building, Building A, is 2 units, 2 stories, addressing. We sort of have them facing and turned towards Cannon Perdido as we do this unit, which we'll see in the elevations. The second building is 3 plaques with parking in between, and this is a 3-story massing. And then the third building has 7 units. It's longer and has 3-story massing towards the middle, and then back down to 2 towards the front. And then we actually have remassed a little bit, which I'll get into a little bit later, down to 1 story. Let's see, refinements. The things that are distinctly different from last time were we've eliminated modifications. So one of the comments from the minutes was observe the pedestrian master plan. So we have committed to that. So we fully observe the setback and the pedestrian master plan additional setback. And we also worked pretty hard with SCE to move the transformer, which was currently, they were wanting it along the right-of-way. We've now relocated it here, kind of straddling this side yard setback, and provided a place for them to have their trucks park, anchor, and access that. Secondly, we dropped a couple of the parking, or the space between building mods, and let's see, distance between buildings, that went away, transformer removed. And then for the units, the major changes were we moved towards a fully accessible unit. We had met the standards with one townhome unit, but we went ahead. Habitat is accepting federal funding, which pushed us towards, and we kind of thought for the life of the project would benefit to have a true accessible unit. So 1-story, ground floor, fully accessible. So this massing changed. So these two, Unit 6 and Unit 7, are now the accessible units, and because of the reconfiguring, we moved down to a 2-story here and a 1-story here. And part of that makes sense because we have a fully accessible path from the right-of-way across all these units to these 2 units, as well as the open, common open area. And in this project, we meet both the common open area as well as the private outdoor living space requirements. And because of that, we moved parking a little bit. Previously, we had accessible parking space here. Well, it just seemed a little more logical to have it next to these units. Part of the PC approval conditions, one item was we're providing covered parking by bike storage in the individual units themselves, but also on site we have a now covered parking area to be used privately or for the guests in the back here. And let's move to the next page. This is second story, so you can see the second story units here, and here. And this is this is the roof plan of the first, and you can start to see we have placed solar panels for every unit, which is going to be part of the project goals. We have fairly aggressive sustainable goals for this project, including 30% past Title 24, which is the Cal Green. We're going to meet a Santa Barbara built green. We're proposing a net zero project and Tier 3 stormwater management. So solar becomes a very important part of that. And then you can see here the 3-story massing is sort of centrally straddling the two second-story portions. This is pushed back into a corner. The topography of the existing Taco Bell parking lot is pretty high and screened with large existing canopy trees. And roof plan.
Brian, did your 3rd story? Why don't you go over?
Want to do elevation stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see what changed from the last meeting.
So one of the main comments was the original concept and sketches was a little too busy, a little too individualized, so we kind of worked towards using a little more restraint as far as the variation of materials. We want a balance between individual units. This is a pride of home ownership project, but not being too busy and too Disneyland looking. So really quickly, this is the face of the project. This is the street elevation on Cannon Perdido, the drive aisle. And here you can see the language is starting to create distinct individual units. So we really came up with about 3 different schemes for the project. So this is front. This is the rear elevation of this building. This is that little 2-unit building with parking behind. And then this is the rear elevation of this. And this might describe it the best. So here in our long driveway elevations, so these are cut in the middle. So you can see where we still are separating the units, but where we got a little larger massing, we didn't want to do every single time, so we keep all the same details, siding, roofing, finished details here, which is the same as this one, and then this larger 3-story mass we broke into 2. We didn't want to get it too vertical and too busy. So essentially we have about 4 color schemes, which is reflected in the other building as well. And the details will match, so we've employed these little covered entries, little gable covered entries in a few locations, and then everything else gets a pretty standardized shed.
And this is all one plane?
where yes, this is the back of, this is the Milpas elevation.
I understand.
So yes, this is all in one
And
plan.
then this is all one plane except that location? Just for the board to understand.
You're just staring here. So yeah, the 3-unit building is one plane in the back, and then steps. 2 are in one plane, and we step back about 3 feet for that 3rd unit. Here we have quite a bit of movement, and then so adjacent to the neighbors. So we do have a little bump out here in this circulation core. So we have a little bump out here. This is parallel, and then we break it a little bit. And then against the neighbors, we have a couple moves here.
All right, let's keep going. Is your 3rd story in essentially the same place that it was the last time you were here?
Yes. The only move we made on the 3 stories, well, we actually reduced. So let me show you. This was probably the biggest massing change. We were previously 2-story and 3-story here. So because we remassed, we nudged into that open area a little bit, but then both shifted down.
Okay.
So we have these 3 are the 3-story. And so this is that 3-unit building from the driveway looking at the front doors. So this is the one that stepped back. This is the side of that little 2-story towards the front, and then this is the view from the neighboring apartment building, essentially.
Okay. Go ahead.
And then I'll let Courtney do landscape.
Hi there. So I'll just run through our plan quickly. We're not at the first presentation, so basically almost all of the paving is permeable. We're looking at using an Acrostone paver, but haven't decided yet. We have a fully accessible ADA route that will be delineated from the vehicular way with either a color or texture or a combination of the two. We have a small common area at the rear of the property with a small tot lot, probably for younger aged children, and a small community garden area, which will have DG paving, picnic area, barbecue, and raised vegetable garden beds. So this whole area will also be enclosed with a low 4-foot-high wrought iron fence for safety. And that's where we have our green waste in the back. Each of the backyards will have a small concrete patio, small planting area, and at least 1 tree per yard, small tree. And Ryan mentioned we have bike parking covered. The streetscape, let's see, we have a couple of jacarandas proposed for some, larger trees to kind of bring down the scale of the buildings. And we also have rain gardens proposed to serve as some of the stormwater management. And the street trees originally were king palms, and we've since switched them to lagerstromia. I believe, I spoke with Tim Downey, and we could do either or for this street. And the Planning Commission did have some questions about the height of the palms underneath the overhead lines, power lines. So we switched it to the lagerstromia. Currently we have the white Natchez variety spec'd. And that's about it for the planting plan. The plant material, we kind of wanted to go with more of a whimsical, colorful design. This is something that we use kind of as an inspiration theming.
What about any existing significant trees?
I was just going to go over that. So this is our tree protection plan. There's a total of 20 existing trees on our property. Most of them are in poor condition. We will be relocating 6 of the 20 and removing 14. 2 out of the 6 are oak trees, so we will be preserving those and relocating them. The other 4 are fruit trees. So another component of the planting plan that I think is really great is that we'll have a lot of edibles for the residents. So
All right.
that's it.
Thanks. We have one public speaker, Kellum DeForest.
Good afternoon, Kellum DeForest. I have, when I saw this in the online, the plans, my concerns are, how does the project meet neighborhood compatibility? Right now, most of the structures are in that block are, except for the apartments, are one-story cottages dating from the 20s, or maybe even earlier. And I want the commission to remember that the landmark Santa Barbara Armory is next door. It's just about a half a block away. How does that impact? It wasn't illustrated in any of the pictures. And I am concerned about the 3-story element. To me, it looks now a little tall, and I don't know how tall it is because I don't see it mentioned on the plans that I've seen. Does it? But I'm sure, I trust it's under the Santa Barbara zoning code, but it does look to me a little tall and bulky. And how many, it looked like a fairly, there seemed to me from those pictures that there were quite a few trees. What trees, maybe I just missed it, what trees are being removed for this project? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kellum. Is there anybody else that wants to speak on this project? Nope. Questions from the board? Gary? Chris?
I just have one, actually. For some of these, the patios in the backyards, I'm wondering if there's a reason they extend all the way to the fence, to the property line, or would there be an opportunity to pull that back a little bit so that, residents don't look directly out onto a plain, bare fence?
When I looked at the backyards for these units, basically the plan is a little deceiving. They're very tiny, and I just thought about how residents might use them, and we could pull it away from the fence, but in reality, if I feel that if somebody has a 12-inch or 18-inch wide planter there, it's probably not going to end up being used as a planter. So, I just thought usability-wise, they probably want to get a barbecue, maybe table and chairs out there, and it seemed like the best way of handling it with the space.
Kirk?
I'm familiar with the site, so I know there's a lot of grading, a lot of fill going on, and I'm just like to see the grading plan when you got it, and any retaining walls. I will just throw that out as a question. Are the retaining walls being proposed?
Yeah, let's see. There is an existing, very large retaining, it's a sloped concrete wall along, so I'm sitting on Milpas, so against this commercial property there's a long sloped retaining wall.
Is that right here?
Yeah, this whole thing.
Oh, it's
right.
sloped.
And what, and sort of fresh off the presses, Habitat's been working with these new neighbors about getting an agreement to use some of that space, which it sounds like we most likely will. So we're using our property line, but essentially what we're going to be able to do, especially on this retaining wall, is just fill against it. So we're going to potentially gain several feet distance in the back and go up against that retaining wall. So that's that retaining wall. Here we have an existing retaining wall that holds the parking lot above, and then this is landscape. And there's existing retaining currently around these two sides, again, because existing condition, as you know, is so low here. So we'll be we'll be retaining up against that, but very minimal, which we can bring in. And then similar, you can see here, we're adding a second to step down just a bit against the existing. And just because it's pretty hard to construct up against existing retaining walls. So yeah, but these essentially, this disappears. We get to grade with our neighbor here, even though we are retaining a little bit. Here we step down a matter of a few feet. I think it's 3 to 4 feet. And then this is a low retaining wall as well, but mostly disguised by landscape. And then this one, again, we're going to try to cut about in half.
From what to what?
Well, currently it's about an 8-foot difference. Because we're grading up, we're getting it down to about 4 foot of slope, but we're going to be pushing out against it. So it's 3 to 4 feet.
So if you had to retain along that side, if you didn't have an agreement with your neighbor to fill in there, the retaining wall would only be 4 feet high?
We would retain to a curb height, then fence it, and there's just sort of this funny wedged-shaped gap that's between our retaining wall and fence and their retaining wall and fence that no one uses. So we get to... Did we get that agreement? It's on its way. So most likely we'll be pushing up against that. And then if we get that, we study how do we fence that at that point, because there'll still be some sort of small gap between an existing fence and our proposed fence, or perhaps we don't do a fence in our backyard and could possibly plant that slope.
That'd be great.
Any more questions, Kirk?
No, thanks.
Paul?
What was happening right here grade-wise? Is this Taco Bell higher than your property, and then it slopes down, and this is slopes to here? And is there a fence being proposed along that line, or what's the topography? What's going on?
Yeah, currently there's a extreme slope again, 6 to 8 feet from Taco Bell sits up here. They retain, and then this is a steep slope down. So we're up at about 26 plus here, as you can see, and getting down to currently 19 or 18. This is sort of a low point. So this is showing proposed. So we're now lifting the whole site up 3 to 4 feet. So there's about a 4-foot difference between the Taco Bell parking lot and this slope down. And would a photo be useful? Yeah. And then this is heavily landscaped right now. There's all these existing large trees are to remain, and we want to kind of fill in where we can to screen even more so. And then, yes, I think, do we have a proposed fence
there
along
is a fence
our property?
proposed. I think for some reason it's not showing up on this plan, but there is a wrought iron fence proposed. Open.
I guess the question I saw was wondering was there enough landscaping between the property line and this paved area for landscaping that would be physically on your property?
I believe so. That area in particular, previously we had included it on the plan. Now it's no longer part of our property, so I'm actually not
sure.
It
was interesting. We discovered there's a third parcel here, a 3-foot swath along this property line that was neither of these properties or the Taco Bell property. And again, Habitat's working to attain that parcel, and it looks like it's moving that direction. So we currently are fencing, but we will gain, you can see here, another 3 feet of property where then we can landscape and move that fence.
I wanted to point something out to the board, whether or not there would be a need to have an ADA path going to these front doors. And you're saying no, but we usually like to have a delineated path of travel for pedestrians coming up from a sidewalk. So I wanted to point that out, that they didn't go across this coloration. And then that this area also was all one color versus having that as like a ribbon sidewalk and then both on the paved portion. But I want to point that out to the other board members.
Any more questions? Keith? Stephanie? I had one question. What is this again?
That's just basically a header of pavers. So it looks like a curb, but it's not. They will be flush, and it's just basically a edge band around this field of pavers.
So this is the same paver as this on both sides of it?
We haven't decided yet. It's definitely going to be a different color, potentially different pattern or paver, model. Still haven't gotten that far.
Yeah, we picture that being almost like a poured curb, and then on either side could be different pavers.
Or it could be
So it really
concrete,
stands out.
And what's that for again?
This was part of
Delineate the pedestrian.
we had a lot of conversations. We were in building department. I had a couple meetings with them regarding this path. So there's been a lot of work.
And you have
put
to have
towards
it?
that.
You have to have a delineated
Yes.
It has to be very clear, the separation or delineation between vehicular and the accessible route.
Quick question, do you need to get into the whole detectable warning separation? You're still messing with that?
It's
Okay.
yet to be determined. We're getting pushed that way, but we're not there yet. There's some gray area as far as interpretation about minimums, and there's currently, depending on when we get into the building department, there's a lot of pushback on those. We might see those being pulled back significantly, but we're still working through that, potentially.
And the only reason that you have to do it is because your accessible unit's back here. If it were up here, you wouldn't have to have any of this.
We know it was irregardless. We
You would
had
still have to
we had
because
to
of the-
provide yes
because of the
to
playground?
Yeah, I mean yes,
Okay.
because we had a common open area.
The trash enclosures are all in the individual units,
They're
right?
townhomes, yeah, so they each have their own.
Any more questions?
Madam Chair, one other question about the solar panels. It looks like all these, the ones, I'm concerned about the ones that face the neighbor to the south, or I guess to be the west.
Yeah.
And it looks like all of them are at the second floor. Looks like all the solar panels.
For most of those units?
There's 3 arrays that are on the 3rd floor of that building.
Yeah, if I may finish my question. So it looks like all the ones at the second floor are above the roof plane of the adjacent apartment building. Is that a correct assessment?
So the second story, each unit has their own panel, so we had to be careful. We couldn't be sharing roof space because these are homes owned by the people. So each unit has a panel system we've already modeled, so it's going to be pretty much this size. So yeah, the second story elements to that adjacent neighbor we're matching heights more, pretty darn close.
The eave lines are matching?
Yeah, so our first and story massing is nearly identical to the neighbor's first and story massing. So yeah, so the eaves are matching. So whatever you can see up on the pitch, could be visible, yes.
And is there one that's located on the first floor roof?
Here,
in the back?
yeah, in the back.
All right, thanks.
Comments? Stephanie? Do you want me to start with you? No comments?
I'll dive in.
Go ahead, Keith.
I think the project's improved quite a bit since we saw it last time. I think the changes in the massing are good moves. We still have the 2 stories to the street. We have the street-friendly entries and porches to the street. I think the simplification of the architecture is a positive thing to what we saw before. So, I think the landscape looks like it's very well thought out. Appreciate the reuse of as many trees as possible. I think the project's ready for project design approval. I would like to see the second floor balconies, some of those studied. There's a number of them that seem a little too kind of long and horizontal, sort of out of proportion with the kind of more traditional architecture. Yes. And I'm sure you guys will work through the paving design, but look forward to kind of the development of that, and as Paul pointed out, providing the delineation of paths to those eastern side units and working through your whole pattern there. But I think you've made a lot of good moves, and it's looking like a good project.
Thanks, Keith. Paul?
I'll agree with Kurt, Keith, that it's a good-looking project. I wasn't here the first time it was reviewed, so I didn't give you any direction on neighborhood compatibility. So I'll just say the massing and the form looks fine, and that's it.
Kirk?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I also wasn't here for the first review, so I can comment, but I won't vote. And I'm just, as I mentioned, I think it's a nice project, and I think it is appropriate for the neighborhood. There's quite a mix down there. And I think particularly the street elevations will be an enhancement to the street. I am concerned about working through all the details on the grading and retaining walls, and I think in my view, before we gave a preliminary or a concept design approval, that the grading plan should be part of the plan, just so we're clear about what's going on there. It sounded like there's some issues with the neighbors to be worked out that we'd want to know what the final plan is going to look like before we went through with it. Unless, if this is what you're proposing is what's on the drawing, then we need to know the retaining wall heights, the fencing heights, and grading amounts, and so on. And then I am a little bit concerned also about the impact of the solar panels to the neighbors. That existing second-story apartment building, which runs almost the entire length along that west side. I'd hate to see panels going up there that's just blazing sun into existing units. Because I know many of them have balconies and large window areas that face that direction at the second floor. So I'd like to see that studied more carefully and see if there might be some alternatives, and maybe. I'll just leave it at that and see if there might be alternatives to if there are impacts. And then also, again, for concept design approval, typically site sections and at least preliminary building sections that include elevations of the existing units or existing parcels on either side and that sort of thing, because there is a lot of grading going on. It'd just be nice to be able to get a better visual on those. That's it.
Thanks, Kirk. Chris?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think overall, excuse me, the landscape plan looks very good. There's one area at the back, I guess it's the northeast corner, where that little 3-foot section is still sort of in limbo. And I think you had mentioned that maybe that was a wrought iron fence. And it says wood on the plan, so if you could clarify which one that might be. I guess question arises, is that area visually pleasing as far as a borrowed landscape that it could be incorporated into your project here, or do you want to separate yourself from that? And if it is a wood fence, that area, it's going to be very stark, I guess. There's no real way to soften if you don't obtain that 3-foot section. There's no way to soften that fence, so it might be encouraging to make it wrought iron. So a detail to sort of look into. I'm also curious about the grading. If I recall, the site sort of slopes down away from the street for the most part. So I would also look for that grading plan as soon as possible. And then the only other thing I noticed was you have those 2 jacarandas that you're proposing sort of flanking, and they seem to be almost in conflict with the street trees. And I know that the lagerstromias are smaller, so it might just be a matter of specking out some high branching jacarandas so that they get up and over, and hopefully they won't shade out those, because I know those lagerstromias need a lot of sun, so this is just something else to take a look at. But other than that, I think it looks very good.
Thanks, Chris. Gary?
Yeah, I would say I'm enthusiastic about the project. I think that we're all happy with the massing. I remember there was some discussion about this unit right here, and I don't think it's quite there as far as the neighborhood friendliness towards the street. I mean, the side lights and the door, I don't think that this matches the character of what you have here, and I think that this needs a little bit more work. And I do have some concerns with the third-story element. I noticed that the center floor is at 9 feet, and we got a 9-foot plate height here, and then we're back up to an 8-foot plate height. Most of this is garage area, and I was wondering if we could reduce that a little bit, and I would be more concerned with this unit right here. Both of these elevations seemed a little, they seem plain, and so does this elevation seem plain. I mean, it's repetitive lights, except for this one here. So I'd like this particular unit to think about a little more articulation, especially in this area here, where you see it from the street. I know that we kind of grade it in, but in reality, we're going to be seeing this 3-story massing right here.
Yeah,
and
from Milpas, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And also from, not just from Milpas, but from Cannon Perdido Street, we'll still be seeing some of that massing, are we not?
No, we're not. Let me get one.
Yeah, go ahead, turn to it.
So here's the 3-story massing. So this
we're
is
not
the
gonna,
face we were looking at.
We're not going to see any of this face or
Oh,
this
sure,
face
sure.
from,
I thought you were
Cannon
talking about
Perdido
this.
Street
Oh, yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah.
So we're going to see some of that massing from there, which is going to make the front units look kind of big. So I was hoping to get a little bit more.
You know, we do have, it's not in the
Articulation.
set, we did, as part of Planning Commission we did story polls, and then we did photo sims based off of those, which I can walk
I don't think
through.
the story polls are going to address what Gary's concern is, actually. He's talking
said
more about
photo
articulation.
sims of that.
Yeah, I'm
of what
talking
you-
about more about articulating. I'd like that 1-foot reduction if we could get it, if the rest of the board feels about that 1-foot reduction. But I also would like to see just a little, either the fenestration moved, not so tight up against the corner, so it brings a little bit more, of this blankness away.
Sure.
Or this one's probably okay, but I was more concerned
this
with
one.
this. Yeah, that's the single unit. Yeah, that's the single 3-story unit.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I was, this is just more of a pet peeve, but it's not. We don't really think about this, but when we look at the project right now, and there's no way around this one here, but we're going to have a bank of meters, which kind of takes away the landscaping. But what we're not thinking about is we have 12 units right here, and we're going to have 12 gas meters, and we have very little landscape pockets. And all of a sudden, we're going to put 12 gas meters in front of these units. Can we think about where we're going to put those meters, not taking up landscape space and not taking up a place that's going to be visual from the street or something like that? So I was hoping that you'll be able to think about that, think about not using the landscaping, think about not visual to the public, and putting them in a place that would be either centrally, that they're not going to have to come to each unit and check them, or... And the same thing with that backflow device. Think about, you're going to fire sprinkler this, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so far back. Think about how large that backflow unit is and where you're going to see it from the street, and if we need to hide it a little bit better, or run it parallel to the fence line or something like that. But think about those things.
I can probably respond to all those right now if you'd like.
Okay. Sure.
If they're on the plans. If they're not on the plans, then we just want you to address it. Yeah, we need to kind of, we're really behind, so
It's up to
do you
I can
have,
respond to that. I think, yeah.
in 30 seconds
All
or
those are
less.
located. Yeah, so all the utilities are behind Unit A. Electrical and gas are all banked, screened on this wall, and we'll screen it here
Okay.
somehow. So yeah,
Great.
we're not going to use up any additional landscape. So that was that. Fire closets are tentatively, we have a fire closet for each building. We've reduced as far as we can until we develop that a little further. And plates, yes, we have a little bit of wiggle room. We just wanted as structure grows, we wanted a little bit of space, but Planning Commission said the same thing. We'll reduce as we can.
That, you're showing planting in that area where you're going to put the gas meters, so you might want to take that planting off.
Coordination.
Yeah,
We need to coordinate
absolutely.
a little bit on that.
Yeah, that's okay. All right, just to wrap this up, I agree that that your plans, you need to be really clear on the site on the retaining walls on the property, and I think your site section is going to address that. And actually, that is a requirement for project design approval. So you don't have a site section?
You know, we did last time, and we show the sections in the elevations. It was hard to read. It gives you, but no, they're not as clear as they could have been. Go
to the front one. That's the
we
biggest
show the
one.
context both of both buildings. So starting the front, we just for context, we're showing this is the existing third-story building. This is the existing second-story building, and it's hard to see because we have this grounding color, but it shows the existing grade versus the proposed grade.
But where's the grade? This is a two-story commercial building, but didn't you say there was a sloped portion back here that?
Yeah. Which we don't have in this set, unfortunately.
Okay. So that's going to. I don't know how important that is to the board right now, but I think it's important at some point to document that.
And just if I might add, for what it's worth, all the retaining and fencing, all the fencing is at grade or the maximum curve. We're talking about an inch or so along this line. There's nothing here.
Yeah, we understood that. It was this one that I think we're the most unfamiliar with, like trying to remember, because we've seen this project.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good.
And maybe, I'd like to clear up one more thing. All the progress we're making with the neighbors, I suppose, cannot be a part. I wanted to give you insight, which it'll most likely move that. But for now, we're proposing what we do own, and that's, I guess, what we should be ruled on for now.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, there's a site.
That's helpful. Thanks, Keith. And I agree with the comment about if you can soften that wall with incorporating the landscaping. I mean, I think that would be really nice. Otherwise, it's just going to look really barren. There's not a lot of landscaping on this property.
We're talking about
We're talking about that
back
3-foot
corner.
strip in that area, and about how you have that 6-foot high wood fence proposed around there with no landscaping up against it, which kind of segues into one of my comments that I think when Chris brought up the lack of landscaping in those private spaces, if you could just put some vine pockets on there, that when you look back, you could. People might not think about doing that, but if it's in there when they buy the unit, it might be kind of nice. I have to agree with Gary on that. I think you have a little bit to resolve with that front street unit with the detailing. This one isn't very street friendly at all, and this particular detailing with this small little wall in this front door as a recess is not a very traditional way of that this would be approached. I just think this isn't quite there. I had to agree with Gary. I'm not going to tell you what to do there, but I also agree with him about the resolution of this portion, and well, particularly this portion where you have the same plane and you have this kind of vertical band and then a horizontal band, and then back here, this all being one plane. I think that the third-story balcony is going in the right direction in terms of kind of breaking up and providing some relief, but I don't think this is quite there yet. I don't think it would necessarily affect project design approval for me, but I think this isn't as nice as it really could be at the end of the day. So those are my comments. And would anybody be interested in making a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion for positive comments, but have them come back to full board for project design approval with the site sections that are needed and the resolution of any other easement agreements, in particular that 3-foot area that nobody owns, because then we know whether or not there's going to be landscaping on your property or at the edge of the paving. That's important to know because that will dictate the width of your building. And the grading and the retaining walls, that's quite basic. And the floor-to-floor plates, we're not telling you we don't like what you have here, but we need additional documentation that you know you can achieve it when you start doing your working drawings.
Are those your comments? That would be your motion?
That would be my motion in addition to study the street friendliness of the western front building, if that makes sense. That's on the west side. This one? Does this have a number? Okay.
Unit 12. Yeah.
Unit 12. Definitely address the plate heights, reduce where possible. Add additional line pockets at fence locations, and provide pedestrian access to all front doors. Indication, we call it wayfinding to all front doors. That's all.
Do I have a seconder of the motion? Seconded by Gary. Under discussion, anything?
Madam Chair, I'd like to comment about the three-story element. I think there's some restudy that needs to go on there.
Or refinement, something. Yeah, can you add something in there about that?
Definitely both halves, or just in general for the entire project?
Well, to me, it was the interior.
It was
So this was the three-story massing on the west building to study the articulation and to provide some more character. And then another comment is to study reducing the size of the balconies on the second floor, the horizontal proportions.
Is that it? All right. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Closer. Almost there. That's two almost there's today. All right. A little behind. Finally on to 1122 Indio Muerto.
I want to keep two. Okay, 1, 2.
Hello. This is while they're getting set up, this is a continued item that we haven't seen for a while, since May 2nd of 2011.
You don't have colored copies?
We had a motion with 14 items that maybe we could just go through one by one, or do you have a different concept now?
We have a different concept.
Okay.
Although a lot of the comments are germane to some degree.
Okay. We'll let you kind of tell us what's going on with this. And your name for the record.
Make sure your mic's not on there.
That one's not on. Yeah.
Okay, for the record, my name's Robin Donaldson, architect for the owner. Kevin Moore from my office is here, and Chuck McClure is here who's working with us on the landscape. We were here I think it was May 2nd, 2011, and I think a couple of you weren't here. I'm not sure.
At least two.
At least two, right? Yeah. You weren't here. Kirk wasn't. And Stephanie wasn't. Okay. So at the time, we came in with basically a courtyard concept. We were still working with the city on the setbacks from the creek. Since that time, we've gotten more clarification on creek setbacks, which basically has resulted, for all intents and purposes, in a redesign, though conceptually we're still trying to kind of keep the same strategy for the project. The project is a for-rent project, rental units. I will start, I think it'll make sense if I start with some of the
the calculations for the site. The area that we need to take out of the site to accommodate the Sycamore Creek setback takes about 40% of our site. If we do a calculation based on the yield for the apartments, we get to a calculation where with the gross area of the site, we could have 16 units. We're proposing 15 units. They're a combination of 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, and 4-bedroom. The parking calculation, when we came in before, the parking, we were asking for some, I guess there were, some reductions in parking. Now we're asking, everything is per city requirements. We've got 2 parking units per unit, plus we've got 4 guest parking, which is 1 per 4 units, and we have 15 units. So we have 34 units, 34 parking spots. We're not asking for any modifications on anything. The only thing we're asking for is consideration from this board on a landscape strip along one of the property lines where we have parking. And so there's a 5-foot requirement. We're asking for 2 feet, and we feel like based on the fact we're giving 40% of our site to landscaping, that we're hoping this board could see that it makes sense to make that shift. Go to the site plan. For those who aren't familiar with the site, this is on Indio Muerto. Indio Muerto runs across here. Our site basically takes up this whole chunk of property here up to the creek here, so it's a site like that. These buildings are being removed. There was a request from the board to show more photographs of adjacent properties. This is showing adjacent properties. One of the significant design constraints, besides the creek setback, is we are going, it's not, due to that creek setback, we're required to kind of group the project in this corner, basically. And in a sense, we're mid-block. So we don't have a structure that's closer than maybe 100 feet, 90 feet to the street in any direction, which you'll see on the site plan in a minute.
These photos, is this you?
Yeah, that's a housing authority project. This back here. These are all rental units around us here. And this is the back of the parking here for the housing authority project. And there's a house here.
Okay.
It's kind of hard for me to tell the orientation upside down.
Sorry, Robin, could you indicate where your driveway is going to be on the street view?
Chris, I'm looking at this upside down.
It's roughly here.
Right about here?
This is the creek bridge right here.
Yeah, that's the creek bridge. Yes, right in here.
And is that front wall going to stay? That runs across?
Yeah, right where your finger is.
Yeah. No, you mean this, whatever that is? No, that's all. No, that's coming out. Any questions? I'll move on to the site plan. So once we've determined, working with the city, we determined this 50 feet from existing top of Bank Creek, which is a calculated top of Bank, which is back here. You can see the kind of the chunk of property this takes out of us here. And in doing that, this 2-foot interior parking setback, this is where I was talking about where the typical is 5 feet, and we want to take that to 2 feet. We still want to get landscaping in there, obviously. We want some kind of buffer along the fence here, but we'd like to shift that back a bit.
Excuse me, Robin.
Yeah.
And that occurs along the sedge here?
That's right. That's where we keep this. Then you come onto the site. We've got 90-degree parking on both sides. Come into here, and we've kind of grouped the structures around a courtyard here, basically. We've got 4 covered parking here with a 2-bedroom unit on top here. And then we basically have townhome units. Here we've got 8 in a block here, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here, and the 1 on top there. The units, like I said, are townhouse. Let's go to the lower floor. Typically living area on the lower floor, and then go upstairs to stacked bedrooms up above. This is as you're working up through the project. Second floor, all 2 bedrooms on the second floors of the townhouses. This is entry into this 2-bedroom unit here, entry into this 2-bedroom unit here. And that goes down to the bedrooms from there. And then the top floor, we're typically 3-story, the variance being some units are 1 bedroom, some units are 2 bedrooms, and that's causing a variation in the massing of the blocks when you see them from different angles. We did generate, if the board's interested, we did generate a model of the project. And it might be helpful just to take a look at it for a second, so you can kind of get a feel for the... Now, why don't you orient it 90 degrees? Yeah, like that. This is actually a 3D print from our 3-dimensional model. And this is where the street is here, and this sets back here. This is the Housing Authority project. This is their parking that comes back in here. These are the rental units that are on the back here. I think we're pretty accurate on the heights and so on, and the location I think we're right on in terms of using Google Earth and so on, and what data we could get from surveys. Grading-wise, I want to bring up to the board that it's being proposed by the civil engineer to basically raise the site 3 feet. Gets us out of a floodplain, being right on Sycamore Creek. We need to do that. What that means is it's actually we have a 3-foot retaining wall on the back edge of the site here, not showing in the model. But the grade comes up about, I believe it's 2.5 to 3 feet to get up to that 3-foot retaining wall. That comes back here and then declines here as it comes out to the street. That gives us positive drainage out to the creek and somewhat to the street here. And we are looking at cover parking here, or carports rather here. This is the 8-unit block here, another unit here. You can kind of get a feel for what we're trying to do, is step back here. You can actually see the project from the street here. I'm sorry, I forgot the name of that street.
Soledad.
Was it?
Soledad.
Yeah, Soledad, thank you. Soledad comes here. When it comes out here, it actually can see the creek, and we'll be able to see across here. And as you come up Soledad and hit India Muerto, you won't be able to see it because of the residence that sits here. As you come along here, you may be able to see it from the street, depending on our landscaping. We want to keep as much of this existing, mature landscaping that's here. What we're hoping to do is kind of create our own little kind of courtyard sort of world back in here. Go to elevations. Unless there's a question about the massing.
No.
Thanks for the model.
That was great.
You're welcome. These are 3D views of the site taken from different, this is actually a view from the street as you come onto the property. Obviously, landscaping hasn't been modeled, but except in a couple spots. This is a view from, we're calling this a view from the creek, but this might actually be Soledad. You might more or less kind of have this view a little bit. We are looking at doing a little structure, this kind of a little view structure over our magnificent creek setback and landscaping. And then this is a view inside the courtyard as you drive in and kind of bear to the left, and you're looking at the other units here. There was a comment, there was a question actually about some of the window treatments at the last meeting. We are looking at, by the way, we're 8-foot plates on each floor. We're looking at sliding glass doors to get light in, as much light as possible into the units. We're looking at doing a screen kind of a screen detail in front of one of the windows. The slider that slides back actually has this glass piece, colored glass piece that provides a guardrail. And it's kind of a typical window motif that runs throughout the project. We are looking at kind of plinthing the project with a different color and the plaster and the base. And then these are little walls that create these little porches at the entry of each unit, and then landscaping would be in here. Chuck will talk in a minute about the landscaping, but I want trees in here with a canopy to kind of fill in and shade, possibly deciduous, let more sun in during the winter. And these are elevations taken not building by building, but by the project. So basically, this is the elevation facing Indio Muerto. We're calling that the north elevation. East elevation is that elevation that's facing towards Soledad Street and towards the creek. West elevation is the elevation that's towards the, hopefully towards the west, sort of towards the southwest. The Housing Authority project, and then this is the elevation that's facing to the units in the back. I kind of think of this as the back elevation that has the rental units. And then these are inside that courtyard. These are the different elevations inside the courtyard. And this is the grading plan. This is the retaining wall showing being proposed here. It steps down as it gets back here. Pretty much showing positive drainage back off of here. Paul brought up on the previous project about the accessibility, and I think we're going to have to work in an accessible route through here. Should be basically across here. We have accessibility from the parking here without any trouble, but from the street we're going to have to get some compromise with the creek setback and the paving for that. Landscape, conceptual landscape.
So here's the creek setback line, and everything we have out here. Well, we've got a bunch of exotics and invasives in the creek, so everywhere on our property we're going to renovate and do a creek restoration, so that's a good thing. And then everything in this whole zone is riparian native to the site. And then you can see just a simple plan, sort of one species of tree here. There's a removal and a tree. I don't know. Probably. Did you have a look at the? We're trying where we can to save the trees. There's some aren't savable and not appropriate. There's quite a number of palms, so we're going to harvest them up and make it kind of a statement there. And species of tree 1 and then the species of tree 2, just for some variation. Pretty simple.
We want to get some kind of taller tree in here, and we want to get something taller and kind of canopying back in here.
Oh yeah, and then there's a small stone seat wall. It's about 18 inches, and that kind of, and then we've got a decomposed granite walk that'll allow people to venture out into this area. And
possibly.
This is we're floating this. The creeks really won't talk to us until we float a proposal. So this is our float, and then this is a buffalo or a Carex grass. So it's not a refined lawn, but it's kind of a more of a coarse lawn. So we think people could come out, sit on the wall, walk, kids could play, kind of thing.
By the way, I just saw something that Chuck presented that reminded me. He's calling it workforce housing. The developer really feels as though in this area he's trying to create an affordable by design, in a sense, rental project. And so we've endeavored to do something design-wise that was simple, yet still had some life to it and was kind of fun. But it is in an area where, he feels like there isn't a predominant style or a predominant sort of look to the neighborhood per se, but feels the compatibility will be in how people live in this place, having their own kind of zone to live in, creating this kind of idea of a courtyard that kids can kind of be out here and people can keep an eye on it. As part of the reason of the way the units are organized on the bottom floor, where the living areas are down on the bottom floor. So I just wanted to add that as one of the thoughts behind the project as a rental project.
All right, thanks, Robin. We have two public speakers. We have Kellum DeForest, followed by Ken Bortolazzo.
Excuse me. Kellum DeForest. I do commend the project, the designers of the project, for their concern for the landscape, especially, I don't know whether they're being forced into it, but they're certainly treating the riparian corridor, which will be a great plus to the area. Is any public access to that corridor required, or is it just going to, I know you need to provide for animal circulation, but will there be a pedestrian circulation is a question I have. The Architectural Board of Review is charged with overall compatibility, not, she mentioned that this is not the most architecturally pristine area of Santa Barbara, but I do not feel a collection of square blocks, design structures, fit the Santa Barbara aesthetic. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kellum. Ken Bortolazzo.
Hi, my name's Ken Bortolazzo, and I've lived in this neighborhood all my life, basically. I live in a family home that I bought from my grandparents in 1976, so my family and I have lived there since 76, and I've played in that neighborhood for well over 60 years. I have a letter here signed by 10 of my neighbors. Unfortunately, I could have gotten more. I talked to some of my neighbors on the phone who were willing to sign this. But unfortunately, I got this notice Friday afternoon about this meeting, and it's Monday, and it's a working-class neighborhood. I had to work. My neighbors work. So anyway, there's 10 of my neighbors that oppose this on the grounds of the three-story. From the description on your letter that went out, that was basically all I got. I know from the previous presentation that they did, which was also the three-story, they're also planning to add the 3 feet of fill. And so at the very least, I'd like to see story poles that kind of show the neighbors what's going on here, because not only do the story poles have to show the 3 stories, but also with 3 feet of fill that they're planning for this property. I had trouble getting some of the neighbors to sign because it's predominantly Hispanic. They don't speak Spanish, and this notice doesn't go out in Spanish. And so I think that a lot of the neighbors that get this notice probably ends up in the trash. So, I mean, that's just a concern I have with the process here. The other thing I'd like to mention is I kind of take offense, and I totally disagree that the neighborhood does not have a feel. There's a lot of craftsman-style homes that were built in the 20s and 30s and the 40s that are still there. Many of the people that are signed this with me they're not just renters, they're homeowners. They live there, and they're in a lot of these are single-family homes, single-story homes that are already disturbed by the two-story things that have gone up, and the shading of their property. They can't grow gardens like they used to. It's just so there's a little concern there with a lot of the neighbors. There's neighbors that'll be. Let me see. This is Indian Huerto, correct? Okay. There's neighbors over here that will be able to see through here.
Can you point it out on this plan, just because of the camera and the people that are viewing from the TV?
Okay, let's see here.
Yes, Indian Huerto here.
Some of the neighbors that are over here are in single-family things, and they can view this. I'm over here on Voluntario Street. I can view in through here. Soledad is going to be a major view. These are blocky buildings that I know originally they were planning using a lot of industrial materials, possibly corrugated steel and things. And I have a feeling it's going to look like a warehouse. And that's not a warehouse district. I mean, if it was a funk zone or, even over by Tri-Counties where there's Quonset huts or something like that, it may be more compatible, but this neighborhood is not that. I think if you visit the neighborhood, you'll see that. I think they've moved this in a positive direction from their last presentation in the parking. They're not asking for the mod on the parking, and I think that's a very positive thing. I think their requirements on the creek are a very positive thing. I'm not sure that was their decision or not, but I think they're doing a good job with it, and I think that'll be a really good thing. I think Soledad's going to have a major view of this, and the view from Soledad is going to look like storage units, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I'm sorry about, I'm being critical of your architectural design, but I mean, that's just my feeling. So anyway, I'd like to ask for story polls at the very least from you.
Can you wrap it up
at this time? All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, questions from the board. Who wants to start? Gary, you want to start?
Question, and that is carports. Are you going to incorporate some tenant storage in those carports? From what I got from your elevations there, you can see right through them.
No, we're proposing that it's open.
So is there a I'm not sure if the city requires to have a certain amount of storage or not. So
I'm only aware of that for condominium projects. You have to provide 120 cubic.
It's not
just
apartments.
condos. It's not apartments. Okay.
Yeah.
That was the only question I had.
Chris?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually have several questions. On that western edge where the parking is going, you have the 2-foot planter. What is directly adjacent on the property there? Is that a landscape area next door? I know there's a structure further in.
It varies. There's one piece of property here that has a residence on it.
Do you have your adjacent structure shown on your site plan, Robin? We could go back to that.
On the survey, the original survey.
Let's see. Here's the outline here, Gary, of the Housing Authority, but it's showing nothing here, Robin. Is that true?
There's a home that sits here, right about here, which has its side yard setback that is
Okay.
kind of, and on the Google,
It's right here.
no, actually, it's this guy.
Oh, I'm
right
sorry.
there.
Yeah,
These
right
are
there.
the ones coming out. And then it's backing up against the parking for the Housing Authority project, and then the back's kind of side, I guess that's their back setback of the Housing Authority project.
And then your parking will be raised.
It varies.
Probably starts to slope up.
It gets, probably the parking gets up about, here's maybe 2 feet here. It gets up to about 3 feet back here.
Okay, because I was seeing a 3-foot retaining wall with a 6-foot fence here, making it 9 feet on the other side, but that varies.
It varies, but
Okay. Maxed out at 9, I would assume.
it may be the case. I don't know for sure.
Okay.
If I could just tag on to that question. So is the front end overhang into that 2 feet? In other words, is this a curb that acts as a bumper for those cars? And
That wouldn't be
cars
the
go
wheel
in?
bumper. Wheel bumper would be...
Farther back.
Yeah, we have the dimension here.
Okay, there's 18, I see it, thank you.
Okay. All set. And then, I guess you sort of alluded to it earlier about the possibility of being able to use this area for pedestrian use, and you're still looking into that, it sounds like.
We're hoping that's the case.
Okay. And then, as far as you enter the property and then park off here to the left, it looks like there's a hedge between that. Was that meant to be?
Yeah, some screening.
Some screening so that you don't actually look into the...
You can see
Okay.
the grill.
Car screening.
Right. Okay. And you mentioned you have Arbutus shown sort of... There we go, about up here. This is where you'd mentioned that you may want to have deciduous trees, so that Arbutus that you've called out is still sort of in the works and to be discussed.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll get tightened up or
Okay.
discuss that further.
This is also all of your bike parking located here, is that correct?
All in one spot, right?
Okay, so I guess that's all my questions.
All right. Kirk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is it's more of a planning question, but it does affect the aesthetics. Is there a certain demographic that you've been designing around? And I'm just noticing the size of the units is all about 12 to 1,700. Is there some reason why you're not providing more variation in size, like some smaller units or some studios that would help break up the massing?
I think from what the direction of the owner is, he anticipates it being more families renting. So there's a demographic. It's not, obviously you can't say exactly who's going to rent it, but he anticipates that it'd be more families than single.
Okay. The other question I had was, obviously, the variation that you've got happening with the massing along the creek side is great, and very little impact to the street because of the narrow throat there going to the front. But the big impacts seem to be at the back end in this large collection of units. So I've been focusing a little bit more on those, and it looks to me like the biggest variation you have there in terms of indent is about 3 feet, and then the others look like about two maybe. Is that accurate, would you say? That
Sounds about right.
Thanks.
No questions. Keith? Stephanie?
I have a question as I missed in your description on the elevation. Can you describe the windows again? Is this movable shade? Is this a permanent fixed?
That's a fixed shade.
But this window opens and this acts as guardrail?
Right.
And so what is this made of, this material?
Oh, over here. He wants you to point it out, Stephanie, on the screen.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to find it.
And your mic's on.
What is this material?
That material's, we're thinking that would be a tropical hardwood that we'd let go gray. Basically a wood. We'd like to introduce a wood.
And how far out is it from the glass?
Floats about, is it 4 inches? It's 4 inches from the face of the building. It's probably about 6 inches from the face of the glass.
Okay. That's it?
That's it? All right. Comments? Who wants to start? Gary, you want to start?
Basically, I'm not really a huge fan of the international style, but I have to say that I think this complex is quite handsome. I really do like the architecture on it. I think that there's lots of details on it, and I think when we're looking at, that there's some whimsical elements with that skyway that you have up there, and I really am enjoying it. And normally this wouldn't be something that I would even entertain, but I think I really like this project a lot. I like the design. I like that it is somewhat hidden, I think, from the public, and I really do believe that it'll be enjoyed by its users. I'd like to see a little bit more detailing on the trash enclosure. I think it needs to have some type of trellis element or have some more details on the trash enclosure. I'm worried about the outdoor living space. If you're not allowed to use the creek area, I don't think that there's enough area for kids to play in and shoot each other with BB guns and so forth. But so it's important to me that this area be able to be used for children. Otherwise, there really isn't enough space for something that's so family-oriented. And I would comment that maybe you should incorporate some children play area into it where they have some type of play equipment or something like that. And I think that would be something that may be important. But other than that, I really don't have any strong comments on any other changes. I think that the 2-foot setback on the carport is acceptable for this project, given how much generous landscaping it has in it.
Thanks, Gary. Chris?
Thank you. Overall, to me, I think this seems like a very nice project. It is unfortunate about losing 40% of it to the creek, and so in that vein, I would, formally encourage the Creeks Division to allow that activity space in that zone. It'd be a huge asset for the property, and again, give kids a place to play. And if that doesn't happen, that's going to change that completely to an unusable space and just sort of get lost by the wayside. So encouraging the Creeks Department to allow the use there. Some of the other things, the bike parking location to me is sort of unfortunate for these two units in that when they walk out every morning, all the bikes are in front of their place, and so I would either encourage you to find additional locations throughout where it's a little more convenient for folks that are located in other parts of the property to use, or maybe that's something that can go in the creek area as well, or sort of hidden behind a carport somewhere. Basically to find additional or more location for the bike parking. The 2-foot planter, I understand the constraints you're working with here, so I'm fine with that, but I would like to see more planting in there. It looks like you currently have vines on the wall, on the fence, and that's about it. So we'd want to actually fill up that planter, and maybe in lieu of vines, it could be a hedge that sort of works double duty. I guess that's about it. I think I would encourage the deciduous tree for that location here. In the wintertime, that's going to get pretty cold back in there, so I want to get as much sun as possible in that location. And other than that, I guess quick question, you've decided against using vines on the carport, I assume?
Yeah, we had this idea of this kind of high, do you remember that, Chris? We had a high...
Oh, yeah, like a green...
trellis thing
right.
with the vines and all of that. Yeah, we did. We decided to go just with a solid top on
All right, I think that's all I have. Oh, I did have one other quick question for Chuck. There's looks like three trees on here that are substantial that are to remain. Are they shown on the plan? I wasn't finding them.
There's just so many of them, and the survey didn't show all of them. So, and it's very tough to understand where you are out there because it's just, there's no reference points. So there's a couple of, was it 23?
Looks like you have 21, 22, and 23.
Yeah, there's some pretty good-sized trees in here that that do create some skyline action. I can't, yeah, it's 20,
23 is a 30-inch olive.
yeah, we wanted to keep those. So you're seeing that I've got these other trees kind of cheating them out? Or
no, I'm just wondering where they are.
Oh, it's see that,
23 is right there. Oh.
Yeah, there's a
There we
pretty
go.
good mass.
You need to point it out over here.
Got it.
Chuck, he can look at it on the screen.
There's a pretty good massing of trees in here. You're right, I should probably move some of these away to let them have their space.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, Kirk?
Thank you. Yeah, it's a nice project. I think it's for the repetition of the units that you've got, the play that's generally happening on the elevations, I think is really nice. And the fact that you do have this very large open area for the use of the residents, I think it's a big plus for this project and the way it's set back from the street. I think my one concern is really that south elevation and whether there are visual impacts back here or sight lines that might justify getting some more variation and relief to that south elevation. And my suggestion would be to come back with evidence that either that's not really an impactful elevation because of parking areas or what have you back here. It can't really be seen well from anywhere, or that it's whatever the reasoning is, or if there are impacts to look at, providing some relief, greater relief on that elevation, similar to what you've done in other areas, particularly along the creek. But I think also because of the large landscape area of the creek, that the 2-foot along the westerly property line is acceptable.
Thanks, Kirk. Paul?
Great project. I like it a lot. I compare this to what the City Housing Authority did on Bath Street, where they were 30-foot setback from the creek, and they were 25, and they got pushed back to 30, and here you are. You were forced to be at 50. So it's. I appreciate all that you're doing and support 100% of you using this zone, whether it's 25 feet or some portion of it for outdoor living space for the occupants. Very important. And to have your accessible path of travel wind through here. Looking at bike parking right here can also occur at this zone. In this zone, it seems kind of, if you had a path here, mailboxes or whatever, you can have a little bit more bicycle parking. We want to encourage that. On the third floor, the one thing that I feel you need to work on is this elevation here. You did a nice job of having these decks on the third floor, which break up the architecture, and that can easily happen in some pattern in some of these units. Reduces the square footage and all those other negatives, but the fact is that's going to soften this elevation, portions of it, and it needs to happen because this is very tall going up. I know it's in the middle of the block. But that's the only one real concession that I think you need to make from my perspective. The way the mass is, the way it's so far set back from the public streets, the amount of open space that you are providing is tremendous. The 2-foot landscape zone is understandable due to the 40-foot or 50-foot setbacks. So it's a great project.
Thanks, Paul. Keith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can we bring the model over, please? I concur with kind of the site planning. Seems like the right diagram, and given how much
land's given up to the creek. Can we orient it? Yeah. I agree that it really would be a shame if all that creek setback portion of it couldn't be used for common open space, and reiterate the need for the pedestrian access from the street back. I think I'm a little bit of the odd man out here. I think massing-wise there needs to be more work on these two faces, considerably more. I think the relationship here is unfortunate with the three-story wall with very little fenestration. So I think more of these large insets along these edges and stepping down adjacent to this area here, and more study of the fenestration on these kind of side walls. It's sort of kind of extruded and cut off, and then particularly where the steps are. I'd like to see more articulation there, and then I think architecturally, in that vocabulary that you have going with the kind of exterior detail and articulation, that if there could be more of the kind of horizontal shading elements that you show on some of the upper floors, maybe on some of the other elevations, just provide more relief, more shadow. I don't think there's enough of that at this point. And I concur with Kurt's request that we see some kind of views, 3D views from the context to get a better feel for how it sits in and is viewed from the public areas.
From that side?
I think from the street and from this area here. Yeah.
Stephanie?
I would tend to agree with the other board members' comments about relief on the side. And
Stephanie, your mic's not on, I don't think.
Using some of these elements that you used on the courtyard side on this side to provide sunshade relief or whatever. My only comment about that architectural element of the shade screen on this is maintenance and how that's going to look, how someone can clean that. Now it's as these being renters, if it's, can look kind of shabby quickly if it's not easily maintained.
Is that it, Stephanie?
Yeah.
Okay. I agree with everybody. I think that you've chosen stylistically, you've chosen something that lends itself to the three-story stacked volume, and I really like it. But I do agree with Keith that I'm just questioning the usability of these north-facing, the size of those north-facing balconies that are going to be shaded for a lot of the time, and I think that you might get better use out of somehow flipping that plan and getting a south-facing, more sunny balcony. It would also help with the massing of this elevation as well. Just a suggestion of a way you might be able to do that. I'm not sure exactly how to do that, but I agree with Keith as well. This elevation and this elevation need some relief. They're to their neighbors, and it's a three-story volume. I think that even if we don't have to see story poles, is this a planning commission? No, so it may be a 3D model photo montage of what it would look like from Soledad if we don't do story poles, something that would show us what it's going to look like, because I think that landscaping is going to be able to provide a lot of relief. I don't necessarily think that this style is incompatible. I think because of the kind of isolated nature of it, and so many styles in the neighborhood and various sizes, I don't think it's incompatible necessarily, but I would like to see what it's going to look like from the public views. And I agree with the comments about bike storage, the planter seeming fine and just planting it appropriately. And and the usability of the creek and providing a usable space for children to play because of the number of families that are probably going to live here. So that's really all I have to say. I like it. So where are we with this right now, Tony? We can
Still
make comments
conceptual.
only. So this would be an indefinite continuance for whoever wants to make a motion. Anybody want to try to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. Indefinite continuance back to full board with the following comments. The board finds the international style of architecture being shown, neighborhood finds it to be compatible with the neighborhood, given the mix of architectural styles that are existing in the neighborhood, in addition to the fact that it has such an extreme setback from the two primary streets. The board would like to have the applicant return back with some outdoor living space for the occupants, hopefully being able to use a portion of the creek setback, as well as using that creek setback to provide the ADA access from a primary street. The board does not have a problem with the board finds the 2-foot landscape planter acceptable due to the narrowness of land that is available as a result of the 50-foot creek setback. The board would like to see the applicant study the third floor massing of the building facing south. Is this the south?
Mm-hmm. Is that building B? Building facing south.
The building facing south. The board would also like to have the applicant study the fenestration of the side elevations of all the buildings facing, so it would be this courtyard, and that courtyard, or elevations for fenestration. The board would like the applicant to study the location of the bike parking and perhaps provide additional bike parking. And return to the board back to the board with a conceptual grading plan and a conceptual grading stormwater management and grading and drainage plan.
We have a conceptual grading plan already.
We do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We saw it.
Never mind. And that is all that I remember.
Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Gary. Under discussion?
Under discussion, we did not really talk about, but given that it's being raised 3 feet, should we see the retaining walls or where their locations are? Are there going to be retaining walls?
I think they're probably already shown on the grading plan. And there's one retaining wall in the west elevation that I know of, and I didn't hear any talk of any other ones. So, but yeah, we should see all those. I think that
The height, just to know where they're at.
just
And material.
height and material. Okay.
And for another item.
Yeah, go ahead, Kurt.
discussion. Sorry, I didn't think of this before or speak out on it, but the driveway throat is,
Throat is shown as 24.6, and there's, I know the minimum's 18 for two-way traffic, and you've got, with such a wide throat and these very linear straight carports on either side, I'm wondering if it might make sense to reduce that throat, the driveway throat, as it approaches the street where you don't have parking on both sides, to provide some additional landscaping that would help to screen the carports and the project from the street. It's just another consideration.
Madam Chair, another item that I forgot to mention.
Did you get that, Gloria? Okay. And I think that's kind of up to transportation, but it's okay to put that in the minutes that we'd like to study that.
The applicant to provide 3D images from the back corner, which would be the southwest, as well as from Soledad Street, of the revised proposal.
Did we bring up privacy from the, we mentioned looking at the three-story elements that are the kind of ends of the buildings, but did anybody talk about the privacy providing, or somebody mentioned privacy during one of their comments, that they were concerned, especially along the south with the adjacent neighbors. But
under discussion, why don't we add to show the fenestration locations on the immediate adjacent neighbors for the purpose of studying privacy.
even if it's just in the form of photographs of these elevations of these buildings. So, anything else? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries.
Thank you for
All
your
right.
comments.
Thanks.
They're
And that
helpful.
concludes the Architectural Board of Review for February 6th. Thank you for watching.